Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about the 5 best and the 5 worst things about a 3rd gen Chevy Nova. Alright, the number 1 best thing about these cars, they look cool. I mean, do I even need to list the other 4? I think not. The number 2 best thing about these cars is that they're pretty lightweight. Most of these cars with a V8 fully decked out are around 3,200 pounds, and it doesn't take a lot to shed some weight. The number 3 best thing about these cars is if it didn't already have a V8 in it, it's really easy to put one in it. It's easy to put a big block, it's easy to put a small block, and it's even pretty easy to put an LS in there. All the parts are available and they fit really, really well. The number 4 best thing about these cars is parts availability. These cars share a ton of parts with the 1st gen Camaros. All the cool stuff that's been made to fit the Camaro will fit a Nova, or most of it. Sheet metal included, suspension, a ton of stuff that fits both cars is available, and you can make all the modifications you want. Number 5 best thing about these cars is the price. Now I know some of you are going to think I'm crazy and I've lost my mind, but let's be honest. Even though these things have went way up in price, even rusty cars have went crazy for the last couple of years, the truth is, if you compare the price of this car in the same condition as a Camaro or a Chevy, from like the Camaros from 67, all the way up to 73 and possibly even up to 81, the Chevys from 66 to 72, the Novas are still cheaper in the same condition. It's just a fact. The Camaros and Chevys are still way more expensive than the Chevy Novas. Even though the price has gone kind of crazy for the last few years, it's still an entry-level car. Now for the 5 worst things about these cars. The number 1 worst thing, rust. These cars all have it unless it's been like meticulously restored and dipped and vatted and sanded and epoxied. Your car probably has rust. Even if it's rust free, there's probably some rust somewhere. It just hasn't surfaced yet. Now, most of these things rust in all the same places. The quarter panels, like this one, they're all pretty rusty. Bottom of the fenders, all pretty rusty. Windshield channels, trunk floor, the water gets into the floorboards, it rusts the floors out of them. And if you live up north where they salt the roads, put all kind of chemicals on the roads, these cars, the whole bottom of them is gone. It's all Flintstone mobiles. So the number 1 worst thing about these cars is dealing with the rust. The number 2 worst thing about these Novas is the brakes. Even though a lot of cars came from the factory with disc brakes, most of these cars came from the factory with drum brakes. And yeah, drum brakes can be made to work just fine. I've stopped cars going 100, 115 at the track and it had full drum brakes on there and I didn't have any issues. But disc brakes are just better, they're safer, you're way less likely to pull the car to the side under hard braking, and you don't get anywhere near as much brake fade with disc brakes as you do drum brakes. And the price of an upgrade is probably $600 to $700 or more if you're putting a conversion kit on. And the days of buying the brakes off a Chevy or a Camaro or something like that, they're all gone. You'll be lucky to find any of those cars at all in the salvage yards or somewhere where somebody's taking factory disc brakes off to put them on one of these cars. So the best option, and a lot of times your only option, is to buy an aftermarket kit, and that's a pretty good bit of money. The 3rd worst thing about these cars is tire fitment. Now, on a 68 to 74 stock wheelhouse, you can generally get a 275 60/15 with a 15 by 8 wheel and 5.5 inch back spacing. However, if you're running 17 or 18 inch wheels or 16s or something like that, it's harder and harder to find out what wheels will fit until you bolt them on the car. And sometimes the wheels that you want to use on the car aren't offered in the back spacing that you need. So fitting tires on these on stock wheel wells can sometimes be a pain. The number 4 worst thing about these cars is parts availability. Now, I know I just said one of the best things about these cars is the parts availability, and it is. But also the lack of parts, especially some small parts that are very hard to find, makes it part of the worst things too. Now, A-pillar covers, can't get them, especially if you've got a 68 1 year only, or if you've got 73, 74 are a little bit different. If you find some and you buy them and they turn out to be the 4 doors because they're longer, they don't fit. It's just a small part. If you want correct ones, like 69s were padded, so were the 68s, but the 68s are shaped different because the dash is round. The 69s are padded, 70s and up are metal. Well, finding them is really, really hard. Finding the trim around the back quarter window, that's hard. There's a ton of parts for these cars, especially like the 73, 74. If you got a hatchback, you know how big of a nightmare that is. So while parts availability is one of the best things about these cars, it's also one of the worst, because if you don't have the parts and you need them, they're hard to find, and when you do, they're going to be expensive. All right, the number 5 worst thing about these cars is the price. Now, I know I said the price was one of the best things about these cars, and it is, because they're still pretty reasonable. The reason it's one of the worst things about these cars is because over the last few years, the price has gone up and up. And what this has done is this has kind of driven a false market. So a few years ago, if you wanted $25,000 for one of these cars, you were going to have a very hard time getting it. All right. Well, nowadays that's not so bad. It doesn't even have to be that nice of a car. Part of the thing that's driven the value up is when the prices started coming up, classic car dealers started buying these things up. So you had somebody trying to sell one for $20,000 or so. Well, they might have a somewhat difficult time selling it for $20,000. Classic car dealer comes along, they pay them to $20,000 because they know they can get someone to buy it. Well, they're going to sell it for 30 or 35 or maybe even 40. Well, why would someone pay them $40,000 for it or 35 when they wouldn't pay the first guy 20? Financing. So the classic car dealers know that most people don't have 20, 25 grand laying around to go pay cash for a muscle car or classic car. So they go out and buy the popular and hot cars of the moment, put them on their lot, and they can make money off them, mark them up, because people will pay more because they can finance it and make a payment because they don't have to come off the hip with all the money at one time. So all that has done has driven the price of these things up and up and up. And if you find a beater car, which, that's my MO anyway, you get something kind of ratty or shaggy looking, I'm all about it because it'll be a cool car and, you're not going to break the bank buying it or building it. But if you get a nice example of a 68 74 Chevy Nova, the price gets way up there. And a lot of it is because a lot of people are going and buying these cars from classic car dealers or just buying a really nice example from a private seller. And, they're happy paying it because that's what they want. And it's easier to get these cars now. So it's driving the market, raising the prices up, and making it unaffordable for a lot of people. But the deals are still out there. This budget Nova, it took me a lot longer to build this thing than I originally planned. And I am over budget. I'm not that far over budget. And I am going to reveal the budget and all this thing when I'm done with this car and it's going to its new owner. So, appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next video. The fifth best... The fifth best things about these. The number 5 best thing about. The number 4 best thing about these Novas is that they're, I don't know, what was I going to say? Write this crap down, man. The number 4 best thing about these Novas is parts availability.